Pediatric Lounge, a podcast taking you behind the door of the physician's lounge to get a deeper insight into just what docs are talking about today. From the clinically profound to the wonderfully routine and everything in between.
Good afternoon, George, and it is a Tuesday morning, and we're in Pompano Beach, and I'm being a guest of you and your wonderful wife, Delia, and we're going to record a podcast from the pool.
Yep, and it's going to be a nice sunny day. Today we have Dr. Scott Weissman. Did I say that correct?
Wisman, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Scott
Thanks.
Weissman.
Yes.
Topic of discussion is going to be, yes, I started my own independent pediatric practice in MoCo.
Dr. Wisman is a friend of mine and a dedicated pediatrician serving families throughout Montgomery County, Maryland, otherwise known as MoCo, as part of Wonder Years Pediatrics. He has a strong commitment to providing comprehensive, compassionate care for children from infancy through adolescence. Dr. Wisman brings expertise and one approach to pediatric medicine. He focuses on supporting healthy development, preventive care, and building lasting relationships with patients and their families in Montgomery County, Maryland. Welcome, Scott. It's great to see you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. If I knew ahead of time, I would have worn my swimsuit, but I'm still here in clinic and unfortunately not at the beach, but the beach is definitely my happy place. Yeah.
10 minutes ago, we were in swimming pool.
Yes.
Pull up, set up the equipment, and off we go.
Love it. Love it. Yeah.
So, Scott, why did you choose pediatrics?
I've wanted to go into pediatrics, or I wanted to go into pediatrics really ever since I was probably about junior high, I guess, was the kind of my light bulb moment. But interesting, when I was younger, I always really liked the kind of nature and biology and kind of the world around me. And as a little background, I'm actually from Manhattan, but Manhattan, Kansas, as we affectionately call it, the Little Apple. And in Manhattan, Kansas, it's a big college town with Kansas State. That's where Kansas State University is. And actually, that's where I went to undergrad. But they have a big school of veterinary medicine. And kind of my moment was interested in, as far as when I wanted to go into medicine. They had one of the open houses as I was going through as a seventh grader. There was a demonstration had a cow with one of I guess they call it a cannulation hole that's like inside. That's a hole that's made in the rumen of the stomach for the cow and as a plug. So from the outside, you can do tests and you can check how the cow has been digesting their grass and their food. And so I got to put on a long glove and stick my hand in this rumen, the side of this cow, as the cow was just looking at me. And right then I was like, that was the real moment when I thought, oh, this is great. So for a while I wanted to be a vet. And so over the course, I think, of the rest of junior high and high school, I was also involved with a lot of activities with children. So like everything from Vacation Bible School to there was a theater group in my hometown that over the summer we would put on plays and puppet shows for kids. So then it naturally evolved into wanting to actually work with kids. And I also found myself really fascinated with just families and really looking at not just children, but their parents themselves. And then when I got into college, I was interested actually in Spanish. That was a kind of another story. We had an exchange student from Argentina that was with us, that stayed with us my junior year in high school. And then, so when I went into college, I decided I wanted to look into pre-medicine, but I still wanted to study Spanish at the same time. So then through the course of college, I just kept participating in different activities, either volunteer groups or went on some exchanges to Latin America. And it all still really held an interest with working in the medical field. And then also again with children and families. And so when I went into medical school, that was in the back of my mind, or really the forefront of my mind, that was something that I wanted to pursue. So that's a little bit of that.
So where did you go in Latin America?
So interesting enough, I know, Herb, you actually studied in Costa Rica, right? I think for medical school.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was an exchange student in Costa Rica. So I was in Liberia in Guanacaste. So for the summer program. And I did that after my senior year. And then after senior year of high school, And then my sophomore year in college, I actually went back down on a community service program that was outside of San Jose, but in Alajuelita, like a barrio that was there. Yeah. And I lived with a nurse down there, and we worked in a clinic, and we had Lamaze classes, and that was really when I got to start using my Spanish in the healthcare setting, which was amazing. And of course, just that trial and error, you just have to keep using it and using it. And so and that really also made me more interested. So when I was looking at medical schools and what I wanted to do even afterwards, that was definitely a big part of it.
And did you ever go down to Argentina to visit your housemate?
I never did. And so and that's still on my bucket list. My parents, I think it actually during medical school, and it might've been during one of the boards that we had to do, he got married. And so my parents went down there. So they've actually been down there. Yeah. He is actually sent in full disclosure, my wife is from Spain. So that was and when we got married, Fernando and at that time his wife, they came and visited us they came to the wedding. And that was funny because Fernando, who we had for the year. So I became middle child. I have another brother who was younger, and I was a junior in high school. And I thought, here I am, upperclassman, but pretty skinny, but still I'm all this and that. And then Fernando came looking like an Argentine Tom Cruise with all this. He had these big side kind of lamb chops, and as far as his sideburns and full head of hair. And he was like a triathlete. So all of a sudden I became like the messenger, like of all the senior girls, and saying, hey, you're the Argentine guy staying with you. Could you give him this? We're going to invite him to a party. And then I realized like there's something to this South American, this Latino thing. And then interesting enough, probably within 5 years, it was right before COVID, he came. It was the first time we had seen him in a long while. Still had that full head of hair, looking like an older Argentine Tom Cruise. And so we've still really kept contact, and just what a wonderful guy. And it was a great experience, really good experience.
So does your wife make paella?
She does. Yeah. She makes a very good tortilla, patata. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
When am I invited to eat?
We should have you over. Would love to. Yeah.
So why did you start your own independent practice in MoCo in the middle of COVID?
Yeah, it was the ball already got started rolling right before COVID, but I had been in practice in the Montgomery County area for about 15 years, and was in a practice that primarily was primary Spanish speaking. We had probably about 70 to 80% patients who were Spanish speaking, Latino and Latina. And then right before it was at a crossroads when I thought if I was ever going to start my own practice, this would be a good time. And that was in the fall of 2019. And so I actually at that time that's when I made the decision I was going to start that up. So I kind of walked away from the old practice. And of course, at that time, I was like, okay, what should I do? I need to figure out, because certainly I did not have a lot of business training at all. I had seen a little bit from the office that I was at. And I ended up I was like, okay, I've got to call people that I've heard about. So hence Chip Hart was the first Chip I called right away and said, this is what I want to do. Where do I begin? So he put me in touch with different groups, such as the Verdon Group with Susan Madden, and also the PMI with Polly. So all of these kind of started, I had heard about, but had never really was like watching from the side. And then the other big part was SOPA, which was also a true lifesaver as far as writing different questions that I had starting that up. But then since the ball was already rolling, I even went to my first PMI conference, which was in Miami. That was in that January of 2020. And there was little rumblings of COVID, but certainly nothing that we would know what was going to happen 2 months later. And then the other thing too, that I learned, I had my orthodontist she had her own private practice, and I was telling her about it. And she was like, you need to call my husband. He's in healthcare finance as far as for like commercial real estate. So I called him up. So it's surrounding yourselves by those that know more than you and could put you in the right place. And so he helped me with a commercial real estate agent, also with where do I go with bank loans, and set me up with that. And then even signed the lease. It was in February, right before COVID. And then of course we were like ready to go. I found the spot. We were going to do build out. And then of course COVID happened. But
Right.
it worked out probably the best because then everything really slowed down. But again, I had no direct responsibility with patients at that time. So I really could take my time to plan out the office and then slowly start with the architect plans. And then we did the build out over the summer and then officially opened up that Labor Day of 2020. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
EHR do you use?
What was that? Oh, I do PCC is what I use. In my old practice, I used ECW or eClinical Works. And that was fine, but I wanted something a little different. I was trying different things. I'd heard about PCC, of course, Office Practicum as well. And I think at that the PMI conference was the first time then I actually, got to meet all of the people that I had heard about. And I think also from that conference, because I had no idea about it before, I think even before for 15 years, sometimes I always felt like I was maybe practicing in a bubble. I didn't really reach out to, I would go to maybe some of the PED staff meetings, maybe at Holy Cross out here, but there wasn't a lot of interaction. And in fact, even the local Montgomery County Pediatric Society, I hadn't really been involved in. So all of a sudden, when I was putting these little connecting dots, I got down to that PMI conference and it was just like, wow, there's all these people that are like doing private practice. And there's Dr. Una, who I don't even know who she is, but I want to get to know her and this Entre MD. So things like that all of a sudden really got exciting. And of course, meeting the PCC folks, meeting PEDS One. So a lot of that support. And even of course, meeting people from Office Practicum. And there was Sue Cressley, who of course is our now AAP president. So all of these just amazing people that I realized that was like-minded, like I found my hive. So when I went back, I was motivated. I knew the different things that I should put into place. Again, not having any business experience and realizing those moments of, I don't even know what the heck I'm doing. But it was good to know that I could easily send a note to like the SOAP-M group or talk to the Verdin group getting plugged in. Yeah.
Yeah. And what differentiates your practice from the bigger practices in MoCo or the corporate owned practices?
Yeah. I think that I like to say that we really give almost like a concierge touch, but with accepting all types of insurances and patients from all over. Now, I'm certainly not concierge, and I know there's that direct primary care. That just was, I know for me, because of the office that I was at, I did have a lot of a patient population that was Medicaid. And then we also had our private practice or private paying or the private insurances as well. And I like to feel like for me, it really is about the family. It really is about, yes, you come in for an ear infection, but exactly there's other things going on, and of course, especially in today's climate and political climate, I've got a lot of families that are, again, that maybe the parents I never ask about their documentation status, but we want to plan a safe place where we can help the families have resources and the families that are with children, that there's a lot of stuff going on. And I like to say that I'm always there for the families. And part of that philosophy of Wonder Year is that no parent should go to bed worried. And so to provide a place where you can come and ask questions and not be afraid of anything, of not being afraid of being a first-time parent, even though you might be very highly educated, but when it comes to a newborn, they don't come with their own manuals. And that has been, I think, the best thing. I guess because we do have a diverse patient population, we have a diverse insurance base, which I really enjoy. Yeah, we provide healthcare to regardless of background and insurance status. And that, I think that sets us apart as well.
So I think you are what we used to describe as the family physician.
Yeah.
About everything, about the medical problems, what medicines they're on, what soccer team they played on, maybe you even coached the soccer team.
Yeah.
Not just a doc in a box.
Yeah, correct.
Some guy filling a spot.
Yeah,
even
the joke. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think even the joke in my family is, okay, we're off to Costco. Dad, are you going to bring your cards? Because we inevitably we will roll into families that we know, or just in the most obscure way, as far as even going out to eat, as you well, it could be on a wait staff, or you're going into the bank and there's the woman behind the the teller, like, oh, you took care of my children, or oh, and because I had been away, I've been getting some of the bumping into people like, oh, we wondered where you were. And of course, when I left, like part of that kind of the agreement, I couldn't directly say anything or reach out with all contract stuff, but at least once I had my splash page, and once you start getting on Google, so my name is now out there. But it is fun to run into people that are like, oh, we wondered what happened to you, and we found you, and oh, where are you? We still, and I still remember there's those families that just are near to dear, that once you see them and you're like, I remember you. I remember when we went to the hospital, when we used to do that. We don't do that anymore, or I remember when they're 3-year-old and we pulled out that piece of balloon that was stuck in your son's nose, and now here he is graduating from high school. He's come a long way. So those are, I still think, are just the best things about being in course in private practice, but in pediatrics in general.
Our job.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot
And
of
of course,
people,
Yeah. So most of my life has been urgent care, emergency medicine, hospitalist, and management and consulting. But I have one T1D family, and he's completed his first year in college with a half scholarship for golf.
oh yeah. Yeah.
And we diagnosed him probably 10, 12 years ago. And even
Mhm.
though I closed the urgent care, the family still kept in touch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I go to their birthdays, I go to the T1D fundraisers with them. And pediatrics is about relationships, very
Yeah.
long-term relationships. Even when you're the ER doctor, the hospitalist, or the urgent care doctor, you still build these long-term relationships with families.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that the wonder of pediatrics, and it's getting harder and harder when you got private equity getting into the field, and they're all transactional.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We are looking at the long term. How do we stay with this family for as long as we can, help
Right.
in their journey with their kids, which is a wonderful journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
so
So
that's mentorship from senior physicians that mentor you and tell you how to be a doctor and how you have a relationship with the families and so forth and so on.
So
Yeah.
I had some great mentors, unbelievable great mentors. I learned everything about business and customer service from Dr. Chuck Shapiro and Chuck Chavino. And Chuck was OCD to no end, director of the PICU in Michigan State, where I did my internship.
Oh yeah.
And he had all these rules, like, you went from the PICU to the floor, and then before he sent them back to the community, the intern had to call the office and say, Dr. Wisman, I got your kid here. This is what happened. He's going to be discharged tomorrow. Here's his meds. We would like you to see him in X number of days. If you have any problems, please call Dr. Chavino. And then I would dictate a letter. He would proof it. The secretary would write it. He would proof it. And then he would scratch out Dr. Weissman and write, Scott,
Yeah.
send the letter. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, Dr. Chavino, why would I disturb Dr. Weissman? He's busy. He's seeing 30 patients a day. You don't have time for my call. He's like, no, he does. This is his patient.
Yeah.
You don't discharge a patient without talking to their doctor. We're not
Yeah.
their doctors. We are here to serve their doctors and the kid.
Yeah.
And that was an incredible lesson about
Yeah.
collegiality, responsibility, and continuity of care. And this was 1989.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
that was a taught lesson by somebody.
It was amazing.
With the hospitals managing doctors and patients and ERs. And remember, in our emergency room, every time we sent a patient, we would call the ER, give them a little synopsis, give them a little bit of what I thought. I remember calling to see Dr. Borowski. She was on the podcast once. Just telling her, Helena, I have this case. I don't know what he has, but good it's not. So she went to figure it out and take it forward. Now, you guard physicians that they don't even want a phone call from. Just send them on there. Or we'll talk to their secretaries. And
Yeah.
you talk to a ward clerk. I'm not going to call a ward clerk.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Throughout my journey in medicine, in the ER, I got to the point where the general pediatricians were like, if it's 2 in the morning, Herb, and you're in the ER, just admit the kid, write the orders, write the H&P, and then let the service know, and I'll round on them at 6.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. You don't need to wake me up. I know you admit more than I would, but you're in a different environment. You can't take the risk I take because you don't know these people. Yeah, you're going to admit more than I would keep some of these patients outpatient more a little longer, but you're in a different environment. You can't take that risk. So we understand that. So we're not gonna blame you for admitting someone. And then in the urgent care, no patient left before we faxed a note over to their primary care.
Yeah.
That was the only way we get them. This was between 2003 and 2014. And the orthopedic surgeons, the practice I used to refer the most, got to the point where they called me up one day and said, Herb, thanks for the notes. We trust the work that you do. So in the future, just tell the patients to show up at 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And we're done.
Yeah.
We'll see them in. We'll work them in. We know they need to be.
Yeah.
They don't need to call us, nothing. Just tell them to show up at 8:30 in the morning the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the beauty of medicine. Now, what did you get right and what did you get wrong? Because it's a journey, right?
Yeah, it's a total journey. And just to follow up with that, we do our prenatal consults, especially we get a lot of new families into the area, which is also we've gotten more new babies. Always telling parents, you don't need my blessing to call the ER, but if you ever are on your way, feel free to call. Because that's the other thing with the office, which also I like. I'm always on. So it's when the phone goes over to the night call, I have no answering service. So the calls go directly to me. So if you are needing to take your child to the ER, let me know. And what I do, part of that is I will call the ER to let them know that you're on your way. And I think there's a bit of peace of mind too, because the ER can be a very scary thing, especially if you're not used to going. But if you have any problems, you can always let me know. You're to help navigate it. You're not going to navigate that alone. And I think, and again, they don't need my blessing. It's not like you have to have my permission. Some people think, oh, the insurance company says, and you call. No, you can go directly there. But if you do call, I'll be happy to put in a call and let them know that you're on your way for whatever reason.
From a manager perspective, what did you get from?
Yeah.
Right
So I think,
what do you think? Man, I hit it right.
Yeah. So partly is from the beginning, I think from management wise, a well thought out office was a good foundation. We started planning the office. It literally was the just totally vacant flooring that they had opened up. So there was no structure there, which was part of the beginning. I was like, I'm ready to work. Let me just go into an office that's already built. And of course, then when COVID happened, when we found that place or right before that had happened, we knew the downside is that you're not going to move in and start practicing right away. But the upside is that you can plan it exactly how you want it, especially during COVID. How do we want to do the waiting room? And if you remember back then, even there's the big discussion, are we even going to have waiting rooms anymore? We don't know where this is going, but we'll make it big enough we can accommodate. And so we can spread patients out. So you're not just very tight in there. We went through the sick waiting room versus we decided we'll just have one basic one. We know that there's no direct difference between, aside from that just feeling a little bit more comfortable. But at the end of the day, we don't want you to be in the waiting room that long. We want to get you back into the room where you can wait on your own. And so that was a big kind of a plan to make sure that we planned to have the office with 9 exam rooms, which seemed very big for just myself, but thinking ahead and that kind of rule of thumb of 2 to 3 rooms per provider, and maybe thinking, well, it'll be myself and in the coming years, 1 or 2 other providers, and then we kind of see what's going to happen. The other one was, do we put sinks in just the hallway or do we put them in every room? And at the end of the day, it was kind of like, I guess if we're going to do the build out, just put them in every room. So we put a sink in every room. We put a little small toilet in the toddler size. And then my little curveball for the office, at least for the build out. And like I said, the beach is my happy place. I put in a 135-gallon saltwater aquarium with Nemo and friends. So we have Dory, we have Nemo. And I found a young guy who had his own business of doing the aquariums and again, going back to that theme of smaller independent practices. He was not in one of these big aquarium firms. It was just himself. And he was like, you know what? If you don't have the walls up yet, you can build it in the wall. So our waiting room actually has part of the aquarium you can see from the outside. And then when you check out, you come around and you'll see the other side of the aquarium. So that provides a nice little barrier between what's behind the kind of the reception area and then what is in the waiting room. And and that's great. So at the end of the day, we've got live coral, there's Dory, Nemo, Jacques, and they would clean the fish, shrimp. So a few cleaner shrimp in there. And so that was also part of that personal touch. Certainly we have there's the TV in there, but it gives families an option to kids and parents that are just mesmerized by just watching the reef while you either wait your turn or as you come out. So planning was, I think, a big part of that. I think they have that good foundation. The other management, I think, was getting good staff. And of course, we started small, and I actually started with 2 medical assistants. And one of the medical assistants now has become my clinical manager, who has been with us since the very beginning. And then also hiring, we've gone through some staff, but getting that right fit for a receptionist, not over hiring, but where we have the 2 receptionists in the front and then getting an office manager and then also in the back, our medical assistant and the clinical manager. So I've got a staff of, it would be 5, and which always for room is now looking for a new provider as we grow. But the other thing too, I think billing company, that was something that I wanted to make sure that someone that could help with that. And again, with that management component of having the Verdant group or I personally used a consultant group. I needed some to have a little bit more like coaching, almost like a life coach / therapist. I think sometimes when I'm on the phone, they're just talking through things that are going in the office to give me ideas. And I think that was some of the smarter things that we did at the beginning that really, I think, have paid off and provided a good foundation for building out the office.
Yeah, I think people are foolish by not paying for coaching and consulting, because when you're so small, you don't have the resources to do data analytics or look at things from this perspective or that perspective, and you're being patient.
Yeah.
And people like, oh, I don't want to spend $1,000. Well, that $1,000 may alert you to a problem that's going to bankrupt your company.
Yeah.
But I think that's really smart. Now, what didn't work? What did you get wrong?
So the great question. I think at the beginning, not as far as not getting quite right, or what maybe I'll say it's always a work in progress. One is to have, I think, a little bit more staff, a couple of things. One, like staff support, making sure we had a makeshift, say, office manual, but to really sit down and think through. I found myself sometimes it sometimes seems some days like 80% of kind of the office. I don't want to necessarily say stress, but the things that keep me up at night, not so much of the patient, but the actual in the staff, and making sure that we have a good, solid employee handbook and maybe a little bit more guidance and really setting the stage for this is how it's going to be. There was a little bit of maybe looser, I want to be flexible. And if you need a little bit of time off, go ahead and do that. But what I would find sometimes it would be like, and we had this more in the past, but if an employee was taking off for a week and then just decided, and I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks instead, but you need to let us know. So those type of things of being, I think, a little bit more exact on laying the ground rules down. And certainly that has been, again, I've been working on that and making sure that the expectations are being met. But at the beginning, I think I want everything to go right. I want to be there's a bit of that. I want to be the nice boss as well, because that's why people come, because for patient wise, and I'll meet their needs. But at the same time, that's part of that mindset of running a business and, to have maybe a little bit more structure. And I think the people we have in place now have kept me going with that on and making sure that like I said, the office manager, the clinical manager, and even that helped me along. No, you need to be a little bit more strict on this. You need to do a little bit more of that. Was to plan maybe earlier on for actually having a new provider to join, because I found myself going into second and third year we gradually had worked our way up to patient numbers, and now I have more than 5,000 in our database.
Wow. A lot.
And so part of that last year, which was the 4th year, thinking, okay, I'll put an ad out on Children's National here has a website for job posting. I'll put it out and see what happens. And I never really got a lot of bites. And so then it was the next thing, I need to be a little bit more aggressive. And so here we are a year into this, even the AP website, we're still looking for a provider or thinking I'll put some feelers out come April for some of these residency programs that we have such great programs around here, only to realize that no, everybody's been doing that like in September and October. It's the mindset of I really have to think ahead months in advance as opposed to, and so that's where I am a little bit on that from the hiring perspective, but thinking of waiting maybe a little bit too long. But again, it's been going well. It's just that, yes, we probably could have started a little bit earlier on that process too.
So I might be able to help you with that. I'll introduce you to someone.
Yeah, that'd be great.
An email. And
Yeah,
then we all have special interests in pediatrics, right? We're specialists, but we all have something that we really like. What's your special interest within pediatrics?
I think there's a few things I find. One is the cross-cultural, the international aspect of health. So again, we have a lot of families coming from either new immigrants to embassy kids, to World Bank kids and families. And that has been a special niche of mine, and also helping to navigate people here for the first time. Where do we go for either specialty or even if it's from themselves for parents or navigating kind of school system, we really help with that. I've also found myself, especially in this kind of post-COVID area, but then this post-pandemic, and I know it's been talked a lot about like behavior health. I have found that people have been coming to find me because of either they've heard that I'm a partly great listener, that I have time to help with either behavior health, also children with special needs. I've found myself, I have a lot of new families that have children either neurodivergent or that are on autistic spectrum disorder, that are on the spectrum. And so that's been something that has been very rewarding, but only to realize that we didn't get a lot of behavior health training and we didn't get a lot of special needs. So I've been learning as we go along, okay, who do we need to send to for specialists and for developmental therapists, and what are the resources out there? So that is, have found that probably within the last year or so, I've been seeing more patients from that, or people that have actually seeking me out because of that, or like ADHD is obviously another big one as well.
Yeah, those are all admirable projects.
Yeah.
They all take up a lot of time.
Right. Yeah.
99213 ear infections. There's not many of them left, so you got to do this.
Yeah. And I usually find that those 99213s are the ones that the parents just took them to urgent care the night before because the ear was hurting and they didn't want to wait until the morning. And so you're left with more physical exams or consults at the end of the day. So I find myself getting more and more busy with that.
Yeah. And then you got an NPH. Why did you get an NPH?
Partly that was a little bit of an origin story as well. The first time when I applied, so coming from Kansas, I applied to the University of Kansas med school and I was waitlisted. And so at that time I thought, because everyone just applied to KU and that was it. I didn't really think, again, this is thinking bigger afterwards and so when I realized that was all of a sudden it was I've got to think through a plan B for the following year. I ended up looking at some opportunities and always had been interested again with healthcare in general, but then looked at, and it just happened to be at Kansas State. I started enrolling in some extra grad courses. And then there was this sign on the wall that was like, come study graduate. We have every graduate study, even underwater basket weaving. I was like, that was just catchy. And then what is that? Oh, it's the George Washington University in DC. Oh yeah. I remember staying there. I had like a congressional internship in college. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, I could maybe apply and see. So I called and they had a program that was international health. There was international health policy and international health promotion. And the more I looked into that, and you could do it in a year, and I thought that might be a great segue. So either I can, springboard to start applying to medical schools outside of Kansas. And at the same time, if I needed something to fall back on to be in health promotion, especially in the international realm, and started researching that. And that's literally what got my foot in the door at GW, and then applied the following year when I was in the program and actually did get into the medical school and then continued on there. And
You,
you know,
you use much of the skills that you learned in your MPH and population health with your practice right now?
yeah, I think so. I think there's a very fundamental aspect of that, especially that health promotion, because really what we're doing as pediatricians, and now more than ever, on promoting good, solid, evidence-based medicine. But at the same time, we have to sell it, we have to present it to the parents that make it relevant to them. And especially in this day and age of all your TikToks and Instagrams, how can I present this information that I know is out there, but to make it so that the parents know that it really is important, and vaccines especially being one of them, or to follow up with mental health, especially for some of our patient population. If mental health, a therapist, that means that you're not quite right. And no, it doesn't. And I think we all could use a little bit of therapy from time to time. And so it's a way of actually using that as a platform and presenting good health information, but again, catering it to our particular patient population. So,
Yeah.
and it's been wonderful to use.
Population health is the new thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Everybody's into population health. And I think it has something to do with this MPH. And
Yeah.
we know about it. We don't.
And,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
when you speak like the Latino, because I was
Yeah.
raised
You're the Colombiano, right?
Colombianos,
Kind of did my,
the Latino woman, when you say your kid's depressed, they want to take the bag and beat you with it.
yeah, the chancla. You get the, it's just malcriado. It's malcriado.
And it's like,
Yeah. He's just bad behaved.
if your kid had asthma, you wouldn't be fighting me with it, but they're depressed and
Yeah.
I put them on antidepressant and you're acting like I just insulted you, your mother, your grandmother at the same time.
Yeah. I'm not raising him.
It's very cultural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're doing a
Yeah.
project where we're reviewing the PHQ-9s on 1,000 patients for a
Yes.
company. And let me tell you, there was a significant amount of positive PHQ-9s.
Yeah.
A little bit positives, but even more, a lot positives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's also a surprise. We do that as well. And following the kind of the healthy children, I guess the guidelines, and we'll do, the PHQ, the depression screening, and and we'll start 11, 12, and the parents are always asking, oh, they don't need to do this. They're fine. And like, we've uncovered so many, especially the junior high level, and thinking this is not, and I always preface it, there's no right or wrong answer to this. We just want it's doing what we'd say a neck up checkup, just to make sure. And a lot of times I usually will do that first to address it. The other thing, and it goes with the junior high especially for females, but I've seen it in males as well. I'll always say I'm checking your pulse, because a lot of times in the summer when you've got long sleeves is always a red flag. So I'll check the pulse, raise up the sleeves to make sure there's no little cutting marks. And I've found that over and over, and just a very subtle nod and then we have to address that. And I usually will speak to them either alone or we'll address it. Do you mind? I'm going to talk to mom and dad about this, because that's a lot of that is going on. You just, and it's taboo to talk about. Yeah. The other thing.
Pediatrics has changed quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said pediatrics?
I was just thinking, so I remember my first day as a medical student, we were GW, they had it was like a primary care apprenticeship program. So you were all assigned. So going back to that great mentors, which I had a wonderful one in medical school, and actually a bunch of them, but one particular one who was from Guatemala. And I was that first time of being I remember going on the metro to go to his office. And I had my little short white coat on, and there was a dad there, and it was a Latino dad, and his daughter was there. And so he started saying, mire, doctor. So I'm thinking, they think I'm a doctor. Look at the doctor. And then he said in Spanish, what I clearly understood was, and if you don't behave yourself, he's going to give you a shot. And so she just started crying. So everyone was looking at me like I haven't done anything. So I slunk down after my now inflated first year med student ego. If they think I'm the doctor too, I'm going to take this jacket off and I'm not going to say anything.
I hate that.
But,
I tell the mothers when they say that, if you don't shut up, I will give you a shot.
Yeah.
You're not
Because
shots are not a punishment.
No, not at all. Not at all. That is always one of my pet peeves.
I'm not here to punish anyone.
Yeah.
I'm here to help people get better.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I can't help them get better. They're going to die no matter what we do for them. I'm here to
Yeah.
hold your hand through that transition.
Yeah.
I'm not here to punish anyone.
Yeah. It
I
shouldn't
hate
be
that
like that
about
at
the
all.
Latino culture.
Yeah.
Doctor, talk to my kid. I'm not going to talk to your kid. You're the parents. If they don't listen to you, you are the authority figure in the family. I got nothing else to say. You're right. They're not listening. Figure it out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm not giving people shots because they're misbehaving. That's just nonsense.
Yeah.
Anyhow, the last time we saw each other it was very pleasant. One of the lifetime's honors of my life at the MoCo Pediatric Society. So Montgomery
You're
County.
right. Yeah.
Society.
Yeah.
And I was so blessed, so honored to speak with Frank Kojan, who is a legend in the care of diabetic patients,
Yep.
not only in our community, but in the nation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such a wonderful human being.
Yeah. And the
One-
fact that having that type of event when the meetings, I think is just great. That was one, and I've alluded before that. And I didn't really participate into a lot of that, but having those quarterly meetings and you're meeting yourself and having some just amazing speakers and meeting legends in their field, like Dr. Kojan, I think was just, it was really wonderful. Yeah.
What did you walk away from that?
Yeah, that one great because that whole, screening for the type 1 diabetes and even with even the type 2, but the antibody screening was completely new to me. And I try to keep up with a lot of the trends, but you just get so busy with different things as far as the latest. So I must say that was a complete eye opener. It hadn't really been on my radar, only to then that same night had texted one dear friend of ours who I know that is T1D, so type 1, and talking about his kids. We need to talk about this. And then going back to the office and already I have a few patients that are type 1. I have a lot that we thought were type 2, and whether this is is it type 1, that's just, you think of, oh, they're just maybe overweight or given their background. So that was I think even it was a beginning to let me look and how can I change my kind of practice as far as for screenings, which I thought was great. The other thing, piggybacking with that particular night, and I know that's especially near and dear to you and all of your interest with diabetes and especially the type 1. So again, when I was in college, I had a fraternity brother who was type 1 diabetic, and he used to volunteer. It was the ADA diabetic camp, and that particular was for junior high age kids. And so for a couple summers, that's what I did. That was another one of these kind of eye-opening experiences to see children and tweens and teens that were dealing with a chronic disease, and seeing that through their eyes, but seeing them at camp and seeing how maybe they were the only ones in their little community in Kansas. And now here they are with everyone that's like-minded, and also that everyone that is on insulin and checking blood sugars. And so one of the things that I did, and I did that for both years for my cabin, the joke was you were either diabetic or you were a non, quote unquote, which meant you're the outsider. But I would give myself, I wouldn't tell them I was a non, but I would go through the motions of pricking my fingers just like they did. And I had a little special bottle of saline, and I basically would give myself saline injections when everyone was doing their insulin, until usually the final end of the week when they started catching on. What does this bottle say? When there was someone that was bringing the insulin to the cabin, like saline, wait a minute. And then that would be the whole, Scotty's a counselor. He's a non. So then we would go through the motions and it was the best experience. And in the meantime, this was in the days of the whole, with everything Mike Myers on Saturday Night Live. So we would do all the skits and jokes, but based on that, which was like from Wayne's World, and like, all right, excellent. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Party on, Garth. All right. We're here with all our diabetic friends. So it really for them became a norm. So they could then go back to their own communities and feel empowered to know that there were kids just like them, and it didn't have to slow them down or to keep them from doing anything that they wanted to do. And that really was also one of these kind of watershed moments of thinking like, I want to have that, and want to have that kind of impact with those patients to know, that to make sure that they're limitless on what they can do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
And then you don't know how happy I feel that you went back and you're thinking about screening it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes
It really
such a,
was. Yeah.
it makes
Yeah.
such a difference
Yeah.
when my colleagues start doing what needs to be done for these kids.
So it has to be in the general pediatric office. That's where the patients are.
That's where the kids
They're not
are.
going to go to the endocrinologist for this.
No.
Yeah.
The
Right.
endocrinologist when they already have the diabetes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have, that's our job.
It's our job
Yeah.
to find these.
Yeah. And I think part of our job too, are just knowing the resources out there. Like I'm not going to be, won't be calling every specialist for you, but I know to have the resources at hand so that to help navigate new types of research like that and things that make sure that you are empowering your parents to know that they can do that. There's so many things that they can do for their own children, but to help them with those resources. And so that's part two, I think, as our office grows. I know a lot of times I get just the day-to-day on, I just get caught up with my charts but the bigger picture of having different services that we can offer, or at least to say, I've just heard about this, but I know a guy or I know a gal a doctor that you might be really interested in talking to, and knowing where to call, which is also great of being in the area that we're at, because there's so many great pediatricians here as well. But having those colleagues about, and by the way, have you guys been doing this? So I can go to good friend and colleague across the street, Dr. Hirsch, Steve Hirsch, who I know you guys have had on the show, and we know from MoCo. Hey, I can text. Hey, by the way, are you doing that in your office? And oh, by the way, with this, because I know he also has PCC, I can connect and say, hey, are you doing this? Or what do I need to do X, Y, and Z? And that's been really wonderful.
Yeah, Stephen is wonderful. And so it's Olivera, I think it's his
yeah, right. Yeah, and they have that too. Yeah,
yeah. She's what a beautiful person she is. What haven't we asked you that you want to share with the audience before we sign off?
Well, I think that the big thing, especially now, I find myself with especially the new parents, and when they come in fact, I did a prenatal visit right before I was on. I think for pediatricians, knowing that this is in as crazy as a world with information coming from all over, and the new current, I would say, winds of political change and our new Secretary of Health and Human Service, I think more than ever, we're in a very, I think, watershed moment to really promote ourselves on being the voice of reason with all of this kind of not misinformation and nonsense that's out there, but to help our families to help navigate a lot of stuff that's going on, especially vaccines. I know that's at the top of the list, which I know listening to, I think one of the podcasts, just the recent ones, and you had the gentleman, the English guy with the communication.
Yes.
So this past week listening to that, about, yes, sometimes it is hard to have those hard conversations, listen to our patients, but at the same time, to let them know where we're coming from. And even to say, like, I will cruise through the Instagrams and the TikToks. So getting a little bit of a side of what is out there, because I think sometimes we have to do that just to see somehow the kind of the craziness is out there. So you actually know, oh, I've actually seen that, but let me tell you that this is not. And I think more than ever, of having that, being the trusted voice of going with the family physician, but especially the family pediatrician, to have your parents really trust you on things that give them a little bit of space. I understand that you're worried about this X, Y, or Z because you've heard about this, but let me tell you. And I think in that past podcast, I know you had some really good information about how to kind of deal with that. As hard as it is, and I could empathize with you guys as well, listening. And when you realize, I don't know if we're going to have any common ground here, but how to get to that common ground. And I think you guys have done a great job on that, bringing that to.
We try to elevate independent physicians, pediatricians, great people like you.
Yeah.
I know recruitment of physicians today is a little difficult and challenging. I'm finding that the medical schools and residency programs are discouraging their students and their residents to join a practice like yours. If I was interviewing in your practice, what would you do to convince me to join you? Why should I join you and not join a hospital system?
We start saying strong is the force with this one. Come.
Yes.
I think, it is. the lure of you can have and I know everyone talks about you can have a wonderful lifestyle being a general pediatrician and being in independent practice, but you have your autonomy and you are the voice that really can make a difference. And you don't have to worry about any kind of corporate hierarchies. If you are in this type of environment, and this is even if I would say a pitch to someone as far as getting a new provider here, is an independent practitioner, you can practice the way you want. You can add things and resources that being tailor-made to how your parents and patients would want, whether it's extra obesity intervention and maybe classes, you can add different services, which that's still on my dream board that I made as far as even from lactation consultant or behavior specialist, but you can make your practice to the way you want it. You can add things to it. You can dress up for Halloween and you can dress up for May the 4th be with you. So if you look on our Instagram page, you'll see all our video reels and you don't have to go through corporate to get it signed off. It's you know what? Today's a special day and it's Superman Day. Why don't we all just wear Superman t-shirts and so those little things that just which we all went into pediatrics for having fun with children and of course with their parents. But I think that would be the big takeaway, that you can tailor it to just exactly how you want to practice. And I totally agree. I know a lot of going through residencies when we were looking at residents fresh out of, as they were finishing, there were a lot of going into subspecialties or even like community health fellowships, which there's a time and place for that, I think. But at the same time, I think part of that is that push for residents to have more primary care, have more, you're in the trenches, so to speak. But you can set your own pace. If you want to work Monday through Friday, so be it. If you want to do an extra Saturday, you can do it. If you want to add an extra urgent care hours at the end of the day, you also could do that if you want as well. But you can make it your own.
To sum it up, I think what you're doing is you're creating your own work-life balance. Everybody talks about that today.
Yeah. I think so. And certainly there's those moments where you think it can be all consuming at times, and because there is a lot of work to that. But I think at the end of the day, when everyone goes home and you look around and say, yeah, we had some challenging cases today, but yeah, today was a good day. And at the end of the day, again, not going to round in the hospital, we take call from home. And at the end of the day, that's where I'll be.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys. This has been great. Really have enjoyed this. And again, thank you for having this podcast out there, because it really, I've learned so much, and it's nice just to be connected with I'm going to make a note of that, with other providers wherever they are around the country. Yeah. Kudos to you guys for putting this on. And I must say, there was one, and it was one of the podcasts you alluded to, the click and clack, which a little car talk. And I can't get that out of my head now.
That is true.
Welcome to Car Talk. This is Car Talk with.
No,
it was a great program.
This has been a wonderful journey.
Yeah.
We've interviewed over 200 people.
Great pediatricians.
Yeah.
Phenomenal pediatricians across the country in all kinds of settings, big practices, little practices, startup practices, research environment. And I can't help but be so proud of my colleagues and friends with the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
And you guys are just awesome. Just awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think I think the community support within that, especially with the independent pediatrician and with private practice, I think is great. And of course, there's great pediatricians in academia and in those clinics run, but it is nice to know that there is this special niche. Yeah. And I have to show you. So one that's on mine, I'll just peer over so you guys can see it, because I know we're still on. So this was after COVID, one of the SOPIM Razzies. This is my pride and joy. My doctor who birthed a clinic during COVID. So I have this little Razzie reminding me that this comes with all the help and support from everyone at SOPIM and all the other independent practitioners who are always there for kind of voice of reason and for good advice. So
we got one of those, right?
We did get one for the podcast.
For the podcast,
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah. And I think that's a great idea. And also to see how pediatricians, I know there's so many now that have gotten into either the social media, but to actually be that voice out there so you know where you can get good sources of information and be well connected. So I think that's great. So again, yeah, thank you to you guys too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Going back to the
Good.
pool.
We're going back
Sounds
to
good. Oh, I would. Yeah. The weather looks great there. So I actually just got back. I was somehow got myself, I was the chaperone at my senior in high school's beach week. So I just got back over the weekend from Corolla, but we had a house full of 12 fine young men with some other families, chaperones, and it all went well. So it was nice to be down there. So yeah.
I hope to see you soon.
Yep. Thank you.
Likewise. We'll see you. We'll see you back here. George,
Likewise.
good to, officially see you. And Herb, good to see you as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Enjoy.